She thought she had control. She thought the world was hers to charm, to navigate, to bend to her will. But one video, one leak, one shocking, impossible-to-ignore clip had turned her world upside down. Meghan Markle, Duchess of Sussex, known for her poise, her strategic image management, and her careful navigation of public perception, found herself facing a panic unlike any she had ever felt. It wasn't a subtle crisis, it wasn't a rumor in the tabloids, and it wasn't a quiet whisper behind palace walls. This was something else entirely. Something explosive. Something that would make headlines, ignite social media, and leave her scrambling for answers in a way no one ever thought they would witness. The footage. The very footage that had appeared online without warning or explanation. It was allegedly filmed during private moments with Tyler Perry, a man who had been her confidant, her mentor, and someone she believed she could trust. The clip wasn't just embarrassing. It was devastating. It threatened not only her carefully curated public image, but also the carefully constructed narrative she and Prince Harry had built since stepping away from royal life. And the moment it went viral, the panic began. Meghan's carefully maintained composure cracked under the weight of scrutiny, betrayal, and the realization that the world was now watching, judging, and sharing all at once. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Imagine, for a moment, being Meghan Markle. Imagine seeing a private, intimate moment, one you believed was confidential, leaked into the public domain. Your heart pounds, your mind races, and the questions swirl. Who leaked it? Why? And most terrifyingly, what will people think? For Meghan, the situation wasn't just about embarrassment. It was about control, trust, and the very narrative of her life being ripped from her hands. And in a rare, shocking admission, she reportedly claimed, "Tyler Perry forced me." The words themselves are enough to stop anyone in their tracks. Can you imagine the public reaction to such a statement? Can you imagine the ripple effect that spreads from a single, explosive claim? But before the world could even process Meghan's admission, the internet exploded. Social media platforms became arenas of speculation, accusation, and debate. Twitter threads spiraled out of control, Reddit forums buzzed with conspiracy theories, and news outlets scrambled to cover the story, each adding layers of interpretation, rumor, and intrigue. The footage was more than a scandal, it was a cultural event. People who had never paid attention to the Sussexes' lives suddenly had a reason to tune in, share, comment, and form opinions. And the most unsettling part for Meghan? Every reaction, every meme, every viral clip was happening outside her control. What made this situation even more unprecedented was Tyler Perry's involvement. A figure of Hollywood stature, known for discretion, for protecting those in his inner circle, had somehow become part of this storm. Whether intentional or accidental, Perry's name added a dimension of credibility, scandal, and tension that made this leak impossible to ignore. The world was now not just questioning Meghan's actions, but also the dynamics between her and Perry, the implications of her claim, and the motivations behind the footage itself. The scandal had evolved into a multifaceted spectacle: betrayal, power struggles, and celebrity intrigue all rolled into one. And for Meghan, the consequences were immediate, intense, and unavoidable. Inside Meghan's private circles, panic spread like wildfire. Advisors, friends, and confidants scrambled to contain the fallout, each weighing options, damage control strategies, and public statements. There were whispered meetings, frantic phone calls, and the urgent crafting of narratives to explain, deflect, and survive. The Duchess herself reportedly oscillated between anger, fear, and disbelief. It's not often that someone of her stature is caught so completely off guard. And yet, in that moment, Meghan Markle was just a woman reacting to circumstances spiraling faster than she could manage. The stakes were even higher considering her history. Meghan had always been acutely aware of public perception. From her early days as an actress navigating Hollywood politics to her marriage into the British royal family, she had learned to anticipate scrutiny, manage criticism, and control the narrative. But this leak changed everything. Suddenly, she was not just under scrutiny, she was under siege. And what makes this scenario particularly fascinating and shocking is the human element. Behind the headlines, the tweets, and the memes There is a woman facing panic, betrayal, and the public unraveling of her personal life in real time. It's a dramatic narrative, yes, but it's also painfully relatable on a human level. Who hasn't felt panic, fear, or betrayal when private matters are exposed unexpectedly? Now, consider the timing. The leak did not occur in a vacuum. It came at a moment when Meghan and Harry's activities were under intense public interest. Every public appearance, charity event, and media interview had been analyzed, dissected, and reported on endlessly. Yet, nothing had prepared the public, or Meghan, for what this footage would unleash. It was one thing to face the media's judgment or social media chatter. It was entirely another to have private moments weaponized against you. And that is exactly what had happened. The Duchess's claim that Tyler Perry forced her adds another layer of intrigue. Was this a defensive maneuver? A calculated risk? Or a raw, unfiltered reaction in a moment of desperation? The questions are endless, and they fuel the tension for every single audience member watching this unfold. And while Meghan was grappling with her panic, the world was not waiting. Fans and critics alike dissected every frame of the footage. Every glance, every gesture, every word was analyzed for hidden meaning, for truth, for scandalous insight. Memes and clips spread at lightning speed. Social media platforms became digital courts, with millions rendering judgment in real time. The feedback loop was relentless. Meghan's panic, isolation, and fear were mirrored and magnified by the global reaction. It's a dramatic, high-stakes scenario that has every element of a viral, cannot-look-away story. Power, trust, betrayal, scandal, and human emotion on full display. The Duchess was caught in a maelstrom, and there was no immediate escape. But perhaps the most astonishing element of all is the role of Tyler Perry. A man known for protecting others, a man who had earned trust and loyalty from some of the most scrutinized figures in the world, was suddenly at the center of controversy. His involvement raises questions that demand answers. Did he leak the footage intentionally? Was it a mistake? Or is there an entirely different motive, hidden beneath layers of speculation, strategy, and Hollywood politics? And most importantly, what does this mean for Meghan Markle's public image, her personal reputation, and the intricate web of relationships she has cultivated over the years? The answers are complicated, controversial, and more dramatic than anyone could have anticipated. So what comes next? How does Meghan navigate the storm? Can she regain control? Or is this the beginning of an unraveling narrative that will follow her for years to come? Every action, every word, and every statement from this moment forward carries weight. Every public appearance will be scrutinized through the lens of this footage, every interview analyzed for hints of truth or deception, and every response will be dissected for underlying meaning. This isn't just about panic, it's about reputation, influence, and the delicate dance between privacy and public exposure. And as shocking as the initial leak was, it is only the beginning. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. It started with a ping, a notification on a phone that no one wanted to see. Meghan Markle, in her private residence, had just settled into what she thought would be an evening of calm, only to be confronted with the digital storm that would redefine her life for the foreseeable future. The message was simple, almost innocuous in appearance: a link. A link that would obliterate any sense of security. A link that promised to expose her in ways she had meticulously avoided for years. And when she clicked, the world changed. The footage appeared. Not blurry, not vague, not easily dismissible. Clear, intimate, and shocking. Meghan's panic was immediate. Her pulse accelerated, and her mind raced. She had believed in privacy. She had believed in trust. And now, in an instant, that belief was shattered. Who had sent this? Who had authorized this? And most importantly, why her? The leak did not just affect Meghan. It sent tremors through every circle she had been a part of. Advisors, publicists, friends, and even members of her former royal network were suddenly on high alert. Calls were made, emails were sent, and private meetings convened. Everyone wanted to know, what could be done to contain the fallout? How could damage be controlled? How could the narrative be shifted before it spiraled completely out of control? But even as plans were hastily formed, one thing was undeniable. The world had already seen it. Social media exploded almost instantly. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Every platform became a stage, every user a commentator, and every post a judgment. Memes were created, threads were started, hashtags trended within hours. And at the center of it all, Meghan Markle was forced to confront the reality she had long managed to avoid. Once private moments are public, there is no undo button. And then came the claim that would shock even her closest allies. Tyler Perry forced her. The words, reportedly whispered in desperation, became another layer of firestorm. The idea that Perry, a figure of Hollywood clout, could coerce her in any way added an entirely new dimension to the story. Was it a defense mechanism? Was it an honest revelation? Or was it a calculated strategy to shift blame in a crisis that was fast outpacing anyone's ability to control it? The truth, as always, would become more complex the deeper the story unraveled. The footage itself, though never fully released publicly by mainstream media, circulated in snippets and leaked descriptions. Observers noted Meghan's apparent distress, her attempts to maintain composure, and the subtle, human reactions that betrayed her panic. Analysts, commentators, and amateur detectives dissected each moment frame by frame, debating intentions, emotional states, and the implications of every glance and gesture. For Meghan, there was no privacy, no respite. Every moment was under a microscope, every reaction analyzed, and every step scrutinized. What made the leak so devastating wasn't just the content, it was the timing. Meghan and Prince Harry had been navigating a delicate balance of public appearances, media engagements, and charitable work. Each event had been carefully orchestrated to maintain public goodwill and promote their ventures outside the royal sphere. And now, the leak threatened not only her reputation, but also the credibility of their public projects. Sponsors, partners, and audiences were suddenly forced to reconsider their relationship with the Sussexes. Questions of judgment, discretion, and professionalism began to surface. The stakes were monumental, and Meghan felt the weight of them immediately. Meanwhile, Tyler Perry's role could not be ignored. Known for his protective nature, his discretion, and his influence within Hollywood circles, Perry had been seen as a safe harbor for those navigating scrutiny. Yet now, his name was inextricably linked to the leak. Rumors swirled about whether he had intentionally released the footage or whether it had been an accident, a lapse in security, a betrayal by someone else with access, or an internal conflict. The ambiguity intensified the drama. For Meghan, the uncertainty was torturous. If she couldn't trust the one person she relied on in these moments, who could she trust? The palace, or rather, the former royal network, was not untouched by the shockwave either. Courtiers and insiders watched with a mix of fascination, schadenfreude, and genuine concern. Meghan's actions had always been scrutinized, but rarely with this level of intensity and immediacy. The leak didn't just threaten a public image, it threatened relationships, alliances, and long-standing perceptions within the institution she had married into. And for Harry, the situation was equally challenging. Protective, but increasingly frustrated, he faced the impossible task of supporting Meghan while also mitigating the public fallout that threatened both their reputations. Across the internet, audiences were divided. Some expressed sympathy, arguing that privacy violations are unacceptable, no matter who the victim is. Others seized the opportunity to attack, speculate, and ridicule. The debate transcended social media, spilling into news commentary, late-night talk shows, and podcasts. Every outlet had a perspective, and each perspective fueled the fire. Meghan's panic, her claim about Tyler Perry, and the footage itself became the focal point of a cultural phenomenon. The intensity was unlike anything she had faced before. And as the world reacted, Meghan reportedly attempted damage control in real time. Phone calls, video conferences, and emergency meetings with advisors were documented by insiders. Statements were drafted, revised, and sometimes scrapped altogether. Each move had to balance honesty, deflection, and narrative preservation. And yet, the more she attempted to regain control, the more elusive it became. Every action seemed only to amplify the situation, creating new avenues for speculation, criticism, and scrutiny. The emotional toll was undeniable. Those closest to Meghan noted that she appeared exhausted, anxious, and increasingly desperate. Panic had set in, and it was compounded by the relentless pace at which the story unfolded. Sleep became scarce, trust became fragile, and every interaction was fraught with tension. For a woman who had spent years cultivating a public image of poise, composure, and self-assurance, the contrast between perception and reality was jarring. The leak was no longer just a crisis. It had become a test of resilience, strategy, and survival under the most intense spotlight imaginable. As the hours turned into days, the story only intensified. New details emerged, rumors swirled, and the social media firestorm refused to die down. The public was insatiable for updates, for opinions, for interpretations. And Meghan, in the midst of it all, was forced to navigate a world that had suddenly become unpredictable, judgmental, and unforgiving. The panic that had gripped her initially evolved into a constant state of vigilance. Every notification, every headline, every message could be the next blow. Yet, for all the chaos, one question loomed larger than any other. What would Tyler Perry do next? Would he release additional footage, make a public statement, or remain silent? The uncertainty surrounding his actions added another layer of tension to an already volatile situation. And for Meghan, the stakes couldn't be higher. Her reputation, her relationships, and her public narrative hung in the balance, all tied to the actions of a man whose intentions remained a mystery. And just when it seemed that the storm had reached its peak, a new piece of information surfaced. Sources close to the situation hinted at an even deeper layer of the leak, a previously unknown angle, a revelation that could shift the narrative entirely. What was it? How would it affect Meghan? And could she survive the next wave of scrutiny? The answers were unknown, but one thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same again. But what came next would shake Meghan's world even further, and it involved someone no one expected to be part of the story. The world saw the panic through headlines, tweets, and viral clips. But inside Meghan Markle's private world, panic had taken on a life of its own. It wasn't the polite, composed public figure who faced the cameras now. It was a woman grappling with fear, betrayal, and the undeniable reality that her life had been exposed in the most intimate way possible. The footage had not just leaked, it had detonated a crisis that demanded immediate action, creative thinking, and, most importantly, control. And Meghan knew, deep down, that control was slipping through her fingers faster than she could grasp it. It began with the phone, a constant, unrelenting device that never stopped buzzing, pinging, and delivering more bad news than good. Messages from advisors, alerts from social media, breaking news notifications, and even cryptic texts from people she trusted or thought she trusted converged into a digital symphony of panic. Each notification was a reminder. The world was watching, judging, and waiting for her next move. And every decision she made would be scrutinized, amplified, and weaponized in ways she could barely imagine. In desperation, Meghan reportedly convened a series of private meetings. Staffers, publicists, and legal advisors were summoned at a moment's notice, gathered in hushed rooms, and tasked with solving an unsolvable problem. The first objective was containment. Could the footage be removed? Could it be suppressed? Could the narrative be controlled before the storm escalated further? Legal teams pored over intellectual property laws, privacy rights, and potential defamation claims, drafting letters, preparing takedown requests, and brainstorming strategies to regain a semblance of control. But the more the legal machinery moved, the more the world outside accelerated. Social media had no pause button. Every action Meghan attempted was dissected, debated, and shared at an unprecedented pace. It wasn't just about the footage itself, it was about perception. Meghan's claim that Tyler Perry forced her had already spread like wildfire, and the court of public opinion was ready to render judgment. The words alone carried seismic weight. Were they true? Were they exaggerations? Or were they a desperate attempt to deflect blame? Every friend, advisor, and insider offered conflicting advice, creating a feedback loop of tension and confusion. And for Meghan, making the wrong move could have irreversible consequences. One misstep, one poorly chosen word, and the fallout could escalate from difficult to catastrophic. One of Meghan's earliest actions reportedly involved direct communication with Tyler Perry himself. In private, she confronted him, demanding explanations, reassurance, and, above all, a guarantee that no further footage would surface. According to insiders, the conversation was tense, fraught with emotion, and at times almost confrontational. Harry, known for his discretion and professionalism, reportedly responded with a combination of calm, reason, and subtle warning. The situation was delicate, and any rash moves could backfire spectacularly. For Meghan, the advice was both helpful and frustrating. She wanted action, she wanted resolution, but she was confronted with the reality that some things, once released into the world, could never be fully erased. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, Meghan's panic manifested in other ways. She reportedly increased her security measures, restricting access to personal devices, changing passwords, and reviewing the movements and communications of anyone in her immediate circle. Every potential leak was now a threat, every conversation a possible trigger for further exposure. Insiders described a heightened atmosphere of tension, where even minor mistakes could trigger a cascade of new crises. Meghan was operating on high alert, constantly monitoring the situation and strategizing her next moves, but the relentless pace of public scrutiny made it impossible to catch a breath. The emotional toll was profound. Meghan, who had long cultivated an image of poise and composure, reportedly struggled with anxiety, sleepless nights, and bouts of frustration. Friends described her as oscillating between anger and despair, moments of clarity followed by spirals of panic. The human element of the story, the fear, vulnerability, and urgency, was often lost in the media coverage, but it was central to understanding why her reactions, including the claim about Tyler Perry, carried such intensity. This was not mere drama. It was survival instinct amplified by unprecedented exposure. In addition to legal and security maneuvers, Meghan reportedly attempted to manage the narrative proactively. Selective messaging, controlled statements, and private conversations with media contacts became a core part of her strategy. The goal was to frame the story in a way that emphasized her agency, her victimhood, and her credibility. But every message risked being twisted, every narrative reframed by critics and commentators, and every public appearance became a potential minefield. The very tools meant to protect her image also opened avenues for further scrutiny, leaving Meghan in a delicate balancing act between transparency and overexposure. The footage's leak also triggered intense discussions within Meghan's personal network. Close friends and family reportedly offered advice, some sympathetic, some critical, and some bluntly pragmatic. Everyone had an opinion on what should be done, who was to blame, and how the situation might evolve. But the diversity of opinions often compounded the stress, creating a chorus of voices that Meghan had to filter through while trying to make strategic decisions. It was a scenario where every choice mattered, and every decision had potential consequences that extended far beyond the immediate crisis. Compounding the difficulty was the public's insatiable curiosity. Social media platforms continued to buzz with speculation, memes, and commentary. Each new post, each viral clip, each retweet fueled the sense of urgency and panic. Meghan reportedly monitored the reaction closely, sometimes obsessively, trying to anticipate the next wave of scrutiny or judgment. The feedback loop was relentless. Every reaction she had, every statement she made, was either amplified or dissected in real time. The situation became not just a scandal, but a public spectacle, a drama that unfolded in front of millions, each person adding their own interpretation, each person a potential critic or ally. As the days progressed, Meghan's measures reportedly became increasingly extreme. Reports suggest she considered relocating temporarily, reviewing her communications with associates, and even restructuring her public schedule to avoid interactions that might exacerbate the situation. Every decision was calculated, every move deliberate, but the underlying panic never fully abated. It was a pressure cooker scenario, where one wrong step could lead to further exposure, criticism, or damage to reputation. And for Meghan, the stakes couldn't have been higher. And yet, despite all these desperate measures, one question remained unanswered. Who was responsible for the leak? Was it an accidental breach, a betrayal by someone close, or a deliberate act designed to harm her? The uncertainty was maddening. Every ally became a potential suspect, every trust questioned, and every assumption reevaluated. The anxiety that accompanied this uncertainty fueled further panic, creating a cycle of fear, reaction, and strategic maneuvering that defined Meghan's days in the immediate aftermath of the footage's release. Even as Meghan fought to contain the damage, the public's fascination only grew. Each new development was amplified by media outlets, each social media reaction dissected by commentators, and every statement or action by Meghan analyzed in the context of the leak. What had begun as a private moment had transformed into a global spectacle. The stakes extended beyond her personal reputation. They affected her family, her public ventures, and even the broader narrative of the Sussexes' lives. And as the pressure mounted, Meghan's panic intensified. Every decision mattered, every move was scrutinized, and the sense of urgency never waned. And just when it seemed that Meghan might be gaining a foothold, a new element emerged. A piece of information so explosive that it threatened to upend every strategy, every plan, and every calculation she had made to this point. This revelation would not just complicate matters. It would escalate the crisis into uncharted territory, drawing in unexpected players and forcing Meghan to confront a reality more complex than any she had faced before. But what came next would push Meghan further into desperation, and it involved a figure no one could have anticipated stepping into the chaos. When the footage leaked, the world didn't just react to Meghan Markle's panic. It immediately zoomed in on one man, Tyler Perry. A titan of Hollywood, a visionary filmmaker, and a man whose reputation for discretion had long been considered unassailable, Perry suddenly found himself at the center of a storm he never asked for. But what exactly was his role in this escalating drama? Why did Meghan claim he forced her? And how could a figure like Tyler Perry become entangled in a scandal that threatened to redefine both their public images? The answers were murky, the motives complicated, and the implications explosive. It's important to understand Tyler Perry's world. Hollywood is a kingdom of influence, power, and unspoken hierarchies. Perry, with decades of experience navigating this terrain, has built an empire on loyalty, professionalism, and strategic discretion. He is known for giving actors and public figures a platform, for providing opportunities that others would never consider. He cultivates trust, builds private relationships, and, perhaps most importantly, knows how to protect his own brand. But in this case, even the most seasoned strategist couldn't anticipate how a single leak would catapult him into global scrutiny. According to insiders, the relationship between Meghan and Perry was always professional, at least in public. He offered guidance, mentorship, and, at times, access to Hollywood circles that few outsiders could navigate. But private dynamics, sources suggest, were far more complex. Perry reportedly took a hands-on approach to his projects, often giving detailed directions, suggesting creative adjustments, and managing personalities with precision. For someone like Meghan, who was navigating her own personal and public transformations, this guidance could be both empowering and overwhelming. The line between mentorship and pressure, insiders suggest, was often blurred. When Meghan claimed that Tyler Perry forced her, the words sparked a frenzy. Critics seized on them, allies whispered doubts, and social media erupted with speculation. The term forced was heavy with implication, suggesting coercion, manipulation, or at the very least, undue pressure. For Perry, who has long cultivated a reputation for professionalism and ethical conduct, the claim was both baffling and damaging. Could there have been miscommunication? Was it a moment of exaggeration born from panic? Or was there a deeper, hidden tension between them that the public would only later begin to unravel? Hollywood insiders began to speculate. Some pointed to the intense demands of the industry, the long hours, and the high stakes of projects involving major personalities. In this environment, even the most casual suggestion could be interpreted as coercion. Others argued that Meghan's claim was part of a larger narrative, a way to deflect attention, protect herself, or negotiate leverage. Perry, they suggested, was a man who understood optics and influence better than most. If there was any wrongdoing, it would be subtle, calculated, and nearly imperceptible to outsiders. Yet there were undeniable complexities in this particular case. The footage revealed dynamics that, while private, were not entirely atypical in Hollywood settings. High-pressure moments, creative disagreements, and intense negotiations are part of the fabric of the entertainment industry. But for Meghan, whose public persona had been carefully curated over years, the exposure of even mundane private moments became magnified into a scandal of epic proportions. The optics were disastrous. What might have been a controlled, professional interaction in another context became a global spectacle. Sources suggest that Tyler Perry himself was caught off guard. He reportedly had no intention of releasing any footage, no desire to create controversy, and no appetite for the global storm that followed. For someone so experienced in managing public perception, the leak was a nightmare scenario. Perry's team immediately began damage control, reaching out to legal advisors, crisis management experts, and communication strategists to evaluate the situation. Every move had to be calculated, every statement carefully worded, and every interaction scrutinized for potential fallout. Meanwhile, Meghan's claim about being forced by Perry introduced a layer of psychological complexity. Was this statement a moment of frustration, fear, or strategic calculation? Friends and insiders suggest that panic can cause even the most poised individuals to exaggerate, misinterpret, or react in ways that seem illogical to outsiders. The claim was loaded, but its context was equally critical. In a world where perception is reality, the words themselves were enough to fuel speculation. Yet understanding the nuance behind them required an examination of the pressures, fears, and vulnerabilities that defined Meghan's private world. Hollywood, of course, loves a narrative. Once the claim was public, reporters and commentators began dissecting every possible angle. Perry's past interactions with actors, his reputation for control, and even the nature of his private studios were analyzed, debated, and sensationalized. The media, fueled by curiosity and the promise of clicks, constructed a storyline in which Meghan was both a victim and a provocateur, Perry a powerful figure potentially crossing ethical boundaries, and the footage the ultimate proof of tension and intrigue. The narrative was irresistible, and the public consumed it voraciously. But there's another layer that few outside Hollywood noticed. Perry's motivations, insiders suggest, were not simple. He had long-standing relationships with public figures, and his interest in maintaining trust, loyalty, and discretion sometimes required tough choices. The leaked footage, they argue, was an anomaly, an unintended consequence of internal systems failing, rather than a deliberate act of malice. Yet for Meghan, who was experiencing panic and fear, the nuance didn't matter. To her, the exposure felt deliberate, personal, and catastrophic. Every instinct screamed for immediate response, for protection, and for control. Adding further intrigue, there were reports of back-channel communications between Perry and Meghan's team. Negotiations over privacy, media statements, and potential suppression of footage created a hidden dialogue that the public only glimpsed through leaks and insider accounts. Each conversation, each phone call, carried weighty implications. Misunderstandings could escalate, intentions could be misread, and every message risked being weaponized. In this high-stakes game, trust was fragile, and the line between ally and adversary was razor-thin. The Hollywood context is essential here. In an industry where reputation is currency, where private interactions can explode into public spectacle, and where every word is scrutinized, the interplay between Meghan and Perry was inevitably magnified. The claim of coercion, the panic over leaked footage, and the global spotlight converged into a perfect storm. It was a scenario that challenged both parties, tested alliances, and reshaped public perception. For Perry, it was a crisis of narrative control. For Meghan, it was a crisis of personal and public identity. And yet, as complex as this web of Hollywood intrigue was, insiders hint at an even darker twist, one that no one expected. There were suggestions of third parties, individuals operating in the shadows, whose motives intersected with the leak, Perry's involvement, and Meghan's panic. These actors, still largely anonymous, were reportedly observing, influencing, and subtly manipulating events in ways that would become clearer only in the next wave of revelations. The tension was palpable. The world watched as Meghan's panic intensified, Perry's reputation hung in delicate balance, and Hollywood's hidden machinery churned behind the scenes. Every move mattered, every interaction carried consequences, and every revelation risked further escalation. And as the drama unfolded, one question remained. Who would ultimately control the narrative, and who would be left exposed? But just when it seemed that Perry's involvement was understood, a shocking discovery emerged. a revelation about the footage itself that would alter everything, challenging assumptions, exposing secrets, and escalating the stakes to a level that no one anticipated. The moment the footage hit the internet, it became the most searched, discussed, and dissected video in global media history. Headlines screamed, social media exploded, and the world collectively held its breath. What was in this footage that could make Meghan Markle panic so visibly? What could drive someone of her composure, experience, and careful image management to publicly claim that Tyler Perry had forced her? And most importantly, what did the footage actually reveal? The first reports described it as shocking, private, and unprecedented. Insiders who had viewed it described a scene that was both chaotic and revealing. Moments of tension, fragmented conversations, and exchanges that were never meant to be public. The footage, according to these sources, showed an environment that was highly controlled yet fragile, professional yet emotionally charged. It wasn't just an embarrassing incident. It was a window into a private world few outside Hollywood had ever glimpsed. What made the footage particularly explosive wasn't a single moment, but the cumulative effect of every interaction captured. Every glance, every pause, every word spoken, or even unsaid, told a story. For Meghan, the camera magnified every nuance of fear, stress, and hesitation. It captured her vulnerability in a way that was unmistakable. To observers, it seemed to confirm the panic she would later describe. But while some saw proof of coercion, others interpreted it differently. A misreading, a misunderstanding, or simply the pressure of being filmed in a high-stakes environment. Social media users wasted no time deconstructing the footage frame by frame. Clips were circulated, slowed down, analyzed for microexpressions, hand movements, and vocal inflections. Hashtags trended within hours, debates raged, and the narrative splintered into dozens of interpretations. Was Meghan genuinely distressed? Was Tyler Perry overstepping boundaries? Or was this yet another case of Hollywood's private world being weaponized in the court of public opinion? The leaks themselves raised as many questions as the footage. How did it escape? Who had access? And why, after years of private management, did it suddenly go public? Sources suggest that the leak may have been accidental, originating from a technical oversight in Perry's studio security system. Others argue that it could have been deliberate, a strategic maneuver by a third party seeking leverage or influence. The truth remains elusive, buried beneath speculation, insider accounts, and conflicting statements. Inside Meghan's circle, the reaction was immediate and intense. Advisors, lawyers, and publicists convened emergency meetings. Damage control strategies were drafted, statements were rehearsed, and media responses were meticulously planned. The panic was real, not just performative. A single misstep could compound the crisis, making the footage not just a private embarrassment, but a potential public relations disaster with long-lasting consequences. But the content of the footage itself added another layer of drama. Sources describe moments that revealed power dynamics, hesitation, and interpersonal tension. Tyler Perry's demeanor, calm yet authoritative, was juxtaposed with Meghan's visible distress. There were exchanges that, in context, might have seemed routine, directives on creative choices, suggestions on how to perform, reminders about timing. But under the lens of the leaked footage, they became explosive. Words like force and pressure were interpreted literally, even if their intent may have been far less sinister. As the media frenzy intensified, journalists and influencers began to speculate on potential motivations behind the leak. Was it an act of sabotage? A desperate bid for attention? Or perhaps a warning to Meghan, reminding her of the fragility of her control over narrative and image? Theories abounded, none confirmed, but all amplified the drama. In this environment, perception was reality, and the footage became the centerpiece of a global story that combined celebrity scandal, Hollywood intrigue, and personal vulnerability. Insiders also revealed that the footage contained moments that were never intended for public consumption, not just interactions with Perry, but private reactions, expressions of doubt, and fleeting admissions of anxiety. These candid glimpses added layers of authenticity that no staged statement or interview could replicate. It was the perfect storm: private fear made public, private interactions weaponized, and a public ready to dissect every second for confirmation of their assumptions. Interestingly, The footage also revealed contradictions in Meghan's public narrative. At times, she appeared composed, articulate, and in control, yet at other moments, the panic was unmistakable. These juxtapositions fueled debates. Was she exaggerating her claim about being forced? Or was this a genuine emotional roller coaster, captured in a way that public statements could never fully convey? The tension between perception and reality became one of the central mysteries driving media coverage and public fascination. Then came the shocking twist. The footage itself was incomplete. According to anonymous sources familiar with the original recordings, what leaked represented only a fraction of what actually existed. Critical sequences, context-setting moments, and clarifying interactions were missing. This selective presentation amplified the drama, created false assumptions, and left audiences drawing conclusions from fragments rather than a full picture. In essence, the leak didn't just reveal, it distorted. It turned private chaos into public catastrophe. The public reaction was relentless. Online comment sections filled with speculation, outrage, and defense. Late-night hosts, podcasters, and talk shows debated the nuances, often without access to the complete footage. Legal analysts weighed in, offering interpretations of coercion and consent in an entertainment context. Celebrity commentators framed it as a scandal that would define Meghan's career, and every new clip, screenshot, or statement ignited fresh waves of commentary. Amid the chaos, Meghan herself was reportedly in crisis mode. Panic, anger, and embarrassment mixed with strategic thinking as she tried to navigate a situation that spiraled faster than she could control. Advisors pushed for immediate public statements, while legal teams considered options for containment, takedown notices, and potential claims of misrepresentation or defamation. Every choice carried risk, and the clock was ticking. And yet, just as the world thought it had fully understood the footage, a new revelation emerged. Analysts discovered that the audio and video had been subtly altered, not enough to be obvious to casual viewers, but enough to change the perceived tone, timing, and context of critical interactions. This meant that everything the public had assumed might be misleading. The panic, the accusation of coercion, the tension, all could be artifacts of selective editing, intentional or not. Suddenly, the narrative became even more tangled, and the stakes even higher. At this point, one question dominated every conversation. What happens next? Would Meghan respond publicly, double down on her claim, or retreat? How would Tyler Perry handle the evolving crisis, protect his reputation, and control the fallout? And most importantly, who truly benefited from the leak, and what secrets lay hidden in the uncut, original footage? As the drama reached fever pitch, sources hinted at yet another layer. Something that no one outside the inner circle could have anticipated. There was a figure, still unnamed, who had the ability to shift public perception, manipulate media cycles, and redefine the narrative entirely. Their involvement, initially invisible, promised to be a game-changer, one that could either vindicate or condemn Meghan in ways the world hadn't yet imagined. The tension was unbearable. The footage had done more than capture private moments. It had set off a chain reaction of panic, speculation, and strategic maneuvering that would reverberate far beyond Hollywood. And just when it seemed that the story had reached its peak, an unexpected leak surfaced. A brief but explosive snippet that threatened to unravel everything, changing the trajectory of Meghan's claim, Tyler Perry's image, and the global perception of the scandal. It was chaos behind closed doors. The leak of the footage had sent Meghan Markle's inner circle into a state of pure, unfiltered panic. Advisors, publicists, legal experts, and personal confidants all scrambled simultaneously, each attempting to contain a storm that refused to be contained. Every phone call was urgent, every text a potential crisis, every email a strategic maneuver. But no matter what they tried, the footage had already escaped the confines of privacy, erupting into the global consciousness like wildfire in dry brush. The first reaction was shock. Meghan's closest advisors, some of whom had been with her since the earliest days of her public life, immediately convened emergency meetings. The footage was not just embarrassing, it was volatile, and the narrative it created, whether entirely accurate or partially distorted, had the power to alter her public image irreversibly. Every consultant, Every strategist understood the stakes. This wasn't merely about reputation. It was about control, influence, and survival in the unforgiving glare of international scrutiny. One insider described the scene as complete and total pandemonium. Phones rang incessantly. Private meetings turned into high-stress war rooms. Statements were drafted and redrafted multiple times, each version scrutinized for tone, phrasing, and potential backlash. Legal teams analyzed every conceivable angle for potential takedowns, copyright violations, or defamation claims. PR teams prepared for a global media offensive. Personal assistants scrambled to shield Meghan from the incessant media pressure. And through it all, the unrelenting social media firestorm grew stronger by the hour. The advisors had to make quick decisions. Should they go public immediately? Should they attempt to suppress the footage? Should Meghan release a statement acknowledging panic or doubling down on the claim that Tyler Perry forced her? Each option carried immense risk. A misstep could amplify the fallout, reinforce negative perceptions, and give critics ammunition that would haunt her for months, if not years. In that instant, every word mattered, every gesture mattered, every decision mattered. Meanwhile, Meghan herself was reportedly struggling to maintain composure. Sources describe her as tense, anxious, and on edge, pacing in her private quarters as she listened to news updates and scrolling through social media reactions. Every trending hashtag, every breaking news alert, every viral clip was a reminder of vulnerability and exposure. Panic was palpable, a stark contrast to the composed public persona she had carefully cultivated for years. The leak had also created a unique problem: information overload. Multiple versions of the footage circulated, each slightly different in length, content, and context. Screenshots, GIFs, and snippets were shared by millions, creating a fractured understanding of what had actually occurred. Some fragments reinforced Meghan's narrative of coercion. Others suggested miscommunication, tension, or ordinary professional interaction misinterpreted under the glare of public scrutiny. The advisors quickly realized that clarity was impossible. They could not control every iteration, every repost, every comment. They could only attempt to influence the overarching narrative. Internal debates erupted over the messaging strategy. Should Meghan acknowledge panic, thereby humanizing herself but validating critics who suggested vulnerability? Or should she project calm authority, maintaining her carefully curated image but risking the perception of inauthenticity? Legal counsel emphasized caution, warning against statements that could be interpreted as defamation. PR experts pushed for immediacy, knowing that any delay would allow speculation to spiral unchecked. And in the middle of it all, Meghan had to decide how publicly she would respond, a choice that carried personal, professional, and reputational weight in equal measure. The advisors also had to contend with the media. Outlets across the globe were digging, analyzing, and speculating. Journalists reached out for comment. Paparazzi hovered near every known location, and news cycles moved faster than any containment plan could hope to manage. Every statement, every public appearance, every social media post was scrutinized, dissected, and framed within the context of the leaked footage. In essence, Meghan's camp was fighting a war on multiple fronts: legal, strategic, media, and psychological, all while dealing with the personal stress of unprecedented exposure. But the chaos wasn't limited to external factors. Internal friction within Meghan's camp quickly became apparent. Advisors disagreed over the best approach, with some advocating for aggressive media countermeasures and others urging caution. Conflicting advice created tension, confusion, and delays. The camp realized that unity was critical, but achieving it under the pressure of public scrutiny proved almost impossible. Each decision carried amplified consequences. Each suggestion was weighed against global perception, and every misstep had the potential to escalate into another scandal. Amidst this turmoil, one thing became clear: the footage had exposed vulnerabilities that went beyond the immediate context. It revealed cracks in Meghan's control over her narrative, highlighted the limits of her influence in Hollywood, and forced her to confront the fragility of public image management. For advisors and confidants, this was a wake-up call. Their strategies, meticulously designed over years, suddenly felt inadequate against the unpredictable force of leaked media and viral speculation. Meanwhile, Tyler Perry's role added another layer of complexity. The footage not only implicated Meghan's panic, but also cast a shadow over Perry's public persona. Advisors had to anticipate potential responses from his camp, weigh their credibility, and predict how any action might affect the evolving narrative. The interwoven dynamics between Meghan, Perry, and the footage created a scenario where every decision had cascading effects, making strategic planning exponentially more complicated. The panic extended beyond professional considerations into deeply personal realms. Sources report that Meghan's family and close friends were drawn into the crisis, providing both emotional support and strategic advice. The boundaries between personal loyalty and professional counsel blurred, creating an environment charged with tension, emotion, and urgency. Every conversation, every message, every decision had layers of both personal and public consequence. Then came the leaks within the leaks, insider accounts, partial transcripts, and selective audio clips that only fueled speculation. Some were credible, others dubious, but all contributed to an environment of uncertainty and fear. Advisors scrambled to verify details, suppress misinformation, and respond to emerging threats in real time. The sheer volume of information became overwhelming, highlighting the limits of traditional crisis management in the age of viral content and relentless social media scrutiny. Throughout the chaos, Meghan reportedly struggled with the psychological toll. Panic, fear, embarrassment, and strategic calculation coexisted in a tense psychological balancing act. Insiders describe her as alternating between moments of composed deliberation and bouts of visible anxiety, a human response magnified to global visibility. Every misstep could be amplified, every emotional display could be scrutinized, and every statement could be twisted. And just when it seemed that the advisors had contained the immediate fallout, a new leak surfaced, this one more explosive, more targeted, and more damaging. It contained a previously unseen snippet that directly contradicted Meghan's public statements and threatened to unravel weeks of strategic planning. The camp realized, with a sinking sense of dread, that the battle was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. The stakes had never been higher. Every moment now carried the weight of potential global scrutiny. Every decision, every conversation, every public appearance had to be calibrated with unprecedented precision. And as Meghan and her team braced for the next wave, one truth became clear. The fallout from the leaked footage would not only define the immediate scandal, it would shape public perception for years to come. But just as the camp began to anticipate the next moves, an insider revelation emerged. A hint at a secret negotiation, a hidden strategy, and a power play that could completely rewrite the narrative. It was a revelation that no one outside the inner circle could predict, and it promised to escalate the drama to levels beyond anything imagined. The world had a front-row seat. The leaked footage, chaotic and unfiltered, had ignited a media frenzy unlike anything Meghan Markle or Tyler Perry had experienced before. Within hours, headlines dominated every major outlet. Twitter erupted with trending hashtags, TikTok recreated snippets in viral clips, and YouTube comment sections became battlegrounds of opinion, outrage, and speculation. This wasn't just news. It was an event, a global spectacle that consumed attention spans across continents. The first wave of public reaction was shock. For many, the idea that Meghan, publicly poised, polished, and perpetually in control, could be seen in moments of panic was jarring. Influencers dissected every frame of the footage, analyzing facial expressions, body language, and even subtle vocal inflections. Was she really forced? Became the dominant question circulating across timelines, with thousands debating the meaning of a single glance, a paused gesture, or a hesitant word. Each interpretation fueled the frenzy, and the story took on a life of its own. Mainstream media played a critical role in amplifying the drama. Headlines used provocative language, emphasizing words like panic, forced, and shocking. Opinion pieces offered competing narratives. Some suggested this was a calculated misstep on Meghan's part, while others portrayed her as a victim of a manipulative system. Every outlet wanted clicks, shares, and engagement, which meant the most sensational interpretations received the greatest amplification. Traditional journalistic restraint was largely abandoned in favor of virality. Social media was an even more unpredictable force. Platforms like Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok created an immediate feedback loop between content, commentary, and interpretation. Fans and critics alike were relentless, remixing footage, creating memes, and speculating on unseen interactions. Every new clip, even mere seconds long, could reignite discussion, shifting public perception in unpredictable directions. Unlike traditional media, social platforms had no editorial oversight, meaning misinformation, exaggeration, and narrative manipulation spread as quickly as verified facts. The commentary often blurred the line between reality and perception. Some observers framed Meghan as reckless, emphasizing the word forced in her statements as evidence of exaggeration. Others sympathized, highlighting the intense pressure of working under the gaze of a global audience. The split in public opinion mirrored broader cultural debates about celebrity, power, and media accountability. Meghan's every action became a lens through which larger societal discussions were filtered, making the story resonate far beyond the immediate scandal. Then came the viral amplification phase. Influencers with millions of followers began creating content that reframed the narrative entirely. TikTok compilations, YouTube reaction videos, and Instagram commentary reels transformed moments from the footage into digestible, emotionally charged narratives. Some highlighted panic and chaos, while others crafted stories of vulnerability, humanizing Meghan and painting the footage as a symptom of intense pressure rather than coercion. The multiplicity of narratives created a chaotic ecosystem where truth was elusive and perception was king. At the same time, traditional media outlets adapted rapidly, incorporating social media discourse into reporting. News cycles moved at unprecedented speed, with articles updated multiple times per hour to reflect trending opinions and newly surfaced snippets. TV hosts debated the footage live, dissecting every interaction with expert panels. Even satirical shows jumped into the fray, amplifying exposure while subtly influencing public interpretation. It was a perfect storm of attention, reach, and emotional engagement. The public reaction wasn't limited to commentary. It extended to direct action. Calls for boycotts, petitions, and open letters circulated online. Some viewers demanded accountability from Tyler Perry, while others criticized Meghan for exposing private moments to the public eye. Supporters organized campaigns defending her, arguing that the footage misrepresented context and violated her privacy. In effect, the leaked footage created a polarized ecosystem in which each side became increasingly entrenched, driving engagement and prolonging media attention. Interestingly, public reaction also reflected cultural divides. Analysts noted that interpretations often depended on geographical, social, and political context. In some regions, viewers focused on celebrity accountability. In others, they emphasized media ethics or gender dynamics. Social psychologists studying the phenomenon noted that the footage became a mirror for broader societal anxieties: power, vulnerability, manipulation, and privacy in the digital age. Meghan, intentionally or not, had become a symbol in a global conversation far larger than a single incident. Amid this chaos, Meghan's camp had to respond strategically, not just to the footage itself, but to the wave of public interpretation. Advisors recognized that media narratives could not be controlled in totality. Instead, the goal shifted to shaping perception subtly, managing key channels, and influencing critical audiences. Every statement was weighed not just for content, but for tone, timing, and potential viral interpretation. Even minor missteps could be magnified, creating new controversies. The response strategy extended beyond traditional press releases. Meghan engaged selectively with sympathetic influencers, coordinated timing of interviews, and carefully curated social media messaging. Each interaction was crafted to humanize her, emphasize her perspective, and counter narratives that suggested coercion or recklessness. But even with careful planning, unpredictability remained. A single viral clip, a misinterpreted emoji, or a misquoted line could undo weeks of careful messaging. And then there was the commentary from Tyler Perry's side. His public relations team acted quickly, issuing measured statements and engaging with media narratives in ways that highlighted professionalism. denied wrongdoing, and subtly shifted blame toward media sensationalism rather than personal actions. The interplay between Meghan's and Harry's messaging created a complex battleground of narratives, each vying for dominance in the court of public perception. Public reaction also included a psychological dimension. Analysts observed phenomena such as collective judgment, outrage cycles, and the role of social identity in shaping interpretation. Fans and critics alike projected their beliefs onto the footage, constructing narratives that aligned with pre-existing biases.